What does quality wood for an electric guitar mean anyway? Hey everybody, Jayce Allan here. Welcome back to the channel. So this is going to be just something real quick. I didn't script this out. It was just something that I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about quality wood, because people in my comments, because of all the talk about wood and wood moisture and all that other stuff, they say that, because when we get talking about the differences between budget guitars and expensive guitars, and if you talk about how good a budget guitar is, then the expensive guys will say, well, they don't use quality woods. Quality wood. And so it just made me wonder, well, what the heck is quality wood? Because they sort of conflate quality with properly cured wood, because we've been talking about moisture content in wood, and Phil McKnight has been going to the factories and seeing their drying process, and we've been talking about wood drying, which incidentally, 6 months ago, people in the comments were complaining about roasted wood. Anytime I would review a guitar that had a roasted neck or a roasted body, they would say, oh, that's just a gimmick. That doesn't mean anything at all. It's just a gimmick. And now, guitars are too wet. But if you roast a body or roast a neck, that's basically drying the guitar, drying the wood. So it's like you can never satisfy these guys, because the reason they don't like cheap guitars has nothing to do with quality or how they sound or any of that stuff. It's ideology. It's image. It's the legacy of Fender and Gibson. It's the heritage of those guitars. It's the USA brand, supporting USA and and all this stuff. So it really doesn't have anything to do with quality or tone or any of that stuff. Those are just things that they attack to give them a reason to not like budget guitars. So it's like I said, 6 months ago it was roasted. Anything roasted was, oh, that's just a gimmick, and they roast it because their wood is wet and it's not cured, so they have to roast it to dry it out. Well, isn't that the same as Phil McKnight's video about the necks going through the Court factory in Indonesia? They're in a drying room. He said it takes 18 hours to dry these things out. That's not very long at all. So, aren't they technically roasted? And if you roast something to drive the moisture out of it to make it more stable, isn't that drying it? I don't understand. It's like the mental gymnastics that these guys have to go through to prove that budget guitars aren't any good is just amazing. So 6 months ago, roasting a guitar was just a gimmick, and cheap guitars were still no good, and they were no good, even worse, if they had roasted neck on them. And now, 6 months later, cheap guitars are no good because the wood is wet, and now it's quality. They don't use quality wood. So let's examine what that even means. So to most of these guys, quality wood means genuine mahogany, ash, alder, maple. Well, most necks are made out of maple anyway. And then they say properly cured, so they kind of throw that in there as well. But it's like if you take a piece of poplar, I have a slab of poplar that's about 12 feet long and about this wide in my garage that I'm going to make bodies out of. It's 8-4 lumber, which means it's about 1 7/8 wide. So once it's planed, it's rough. So once it's planed down, I'll be able to get a 1 3/4 inch thick body out of it. I bought it from a lumber company, local lumber company. So see, there you go. I'm spending my money locally, helping support local businesses. It's a mom and pop business. They build cabinets, but they also sell wood. They have a wood shop, and they sell board foot lumber. So I bought this huge slab of poplar from them, and it's already properly cured, but it's been sitting in my, in my garage. And, I was thinking that after I glued up a body, I might stick it in the oven for a little while just to dry it out further. Maybe try to get it down to about, 6% moisture, maybe 7, try to hold it at that temperature for a while and see what happens. So they don't like poplar because it's cheap. It's a cheap wood. But if that slab is properly cured, I mean, it's already properly cured, but if I went through the additional steps of roasting it to ensure that the moisture content was even lower, isn't that quality? Isn't that a properly cured wood? And if I build a guitar out of it, isn't that a quality wood? I would think in that case, quality would mean, wood that doesn't have any not holes in it or blemishes or things like that, especially if you're talking about a guitar that you're going to finish with a semi-transparent finish so that the grain would actually show. Now, with the poplar body, that's probably not something that you're going to have to worry about. Poplar is, I don't know, it's not that attractive when it comes to the grain. Definitely, that's why they use things like flame maple when they want to show off the top of a guitar. So that just made me wonder, well, what does it mean? What does quality wood even mean? I think people are confusing quality with type of wood. If you think about Leo Fender when he built the Telecaster and Stratocaster, when he first started building, I think it was the Telecaster, those were made in pine. Those were some of the prototypes that were made in pine. And if you go to the internet, it says that production Telecasters made from pine only lasted for about 4 months before Leo Fender switched to ash. YouTuber Chris from Highline Guitars has a great video out right now called 3 Things to Consider When Selecting Wood for Making a Guitar, and he explains that the reason that guitar builders used ebony and mahogany for guitars was because of the piano industry.
Well, when those manufacturers started to ramp up to build guitars to keep up with the demand, they had to use the wood that was available, which was the wood that was being used by the piano manufacturers. And that's what the distributors were stocking. So it was mostly mahogany, maple, ebony, rosewood, spruce, those type of woods. So that's what was available. And that's what the guitar industry became reliant on, were those species of wood.
So that just tells you that, all the arguments and talk about tone wood really comes down to availability and what was being used at the time. And then, of course, when electric guitars started being manufactured, they started out as hollow body guitars. They were basically acoustic guitars that they put electronics in. And so obviously they were being built with the same types of woods that acoustic guitars were being made from. And then when they switched over to solid body guitars, the Gibson Guitar Company with the Les Paul used mahogany and rosewood and all these woods that had been traditionally used, ebony, used for acoustic guitar building. And then along came Leo Fender, and Leo Fender decided that he was going to sort of build these assembly line style guitars. And so, like I said, he used pine for his first guitars, and then later switched to ash and alder. And if you Google why did Leo Fender use ash and alder, because they were affordable, locally abundant, affordable, and easy tools, easy to shape, easy to to make guitars out of. So would that have been considered a quality wood back then? Well, now, because of that tradition, some people believe that if a guitar isn't made out of ash or alder, then it's not quality. But you can make a quality guitar out of basically any wood. Any wood, as long as it's treated properly before you start, building with it. As long as it's cured and had ample time, to dry properly, or if you use a kiln or roasting method to force the moisture out of it, then you should have a stable wood. But people talk about, cheap guitars. They're not quality. They're not quality wood. They don't make them out of quality materials. But the thing is, just because a wood is cheap doesn't mean you can't build a quality guitar out of it, and it doesn't mean that wood isn't quality wood. It's just cheap. It may be cheap because it's really abundant, because it's fast growing. It's really abundant. It's not scarce. Rosewood, ebony, mahogany, genuine mahogany especially, those woods are becoming more difficult to get. They're more endangered. So the whole idea that, a cheap guitar doesn't use quality materials just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't add up. As long as you treat the wood properly, you can make a guitar out of pretty much any type of wood. Maybe where you draw the line would be like balsa wood or something that's really, really soft. But you could probably make a guitar out of balsa wood if you use maple for the neck, and then you supported the neck joint properly. So you could probably really, in reality, make a guitar out of anything. So I just wanted to touch on that. I find it interesting, some of the things that people grab onto to sort of explain why budget guitars aren't any good and why they won't last. They're just going to fall apart, and they're not built with craftsmanship too. They even talk about that. And it's like, well, first of all, most guitars are built on machines nowadays anyway. So when you talk about craftsmanship, what exactly are we talking about there? I think people have this fanciful idea that, that a dozen luthiers are sitting around at Gibson and Fender and they're just lovingly turning out handcrafted guitars. And that's not the case. I mean, maybe with Custom Shop, but even Custom Shop, if you go and watch a video on Custom Shop for at least, I think it's Fender anyway, they still use necks that were CNC'd, and their Custom Shop is more or less, they're assembling a guitar. They're putting it together, and they're kind of putting their own stamp on it, using some of their own components and finishes and things like that to make it a custom guitar. But the body and the neck are still made out of, made from a CNC machine. So yeah, it's just interesting. So I just wanted to talk about that real quick, just to have something to post here. And then another thing I want to talk about in another video will be metal, because people are like, oh, well, they use pot metal in the bridges of, they said the Harley Benton bridge, two-pneumatic bridge, is pot metal, so it's not as good. So I think I'm gonna talk about that a little bit too. I might actually buy a couple different bridges, a really cheap one and a really not expensive, not super expensive, but one that you would find in a more expensive guitar, and then put them in a press or something to see what their breaking strength is, and maybe see inside what how they're made or whatever, because this whole pot metal thing keeps rearing its ugly head, and it did in the comments just a couple days ago. So anyway, there you go. That's all I got for this one. Jayce Allan from Jayce Allan Guitar. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll leave the amp on for you.